I'm ready.
We are live.
We are live. Hello, everybody. Another live stream Wednesday. Welcome. If this is your first time, thank you for joining. We highly suggest that you stick around. If you're a long time viewer, thank you for joining once again. Before we begin, subscribe to our YouTube channel here. Join us on our social medias and join us over on our Discord where we talk a lot of the things that we're going to talk about now with everybody there. But let's hop into it. This week, we got the news, which is not that much, thankfully, compared to the absolutely insane week that was last week. And then we're talking our top 5 DC characters that we want to see within the DC universe. We're very hyped for this. We love talking about things that we love. DC is one of those things. We show up to the movies. Look at that. You see that pop up right there? That's what we're excited about. That roster down there, bottom left, that's the things that we want to see. And we show up to those movies, like I said, as you should as well, specifically you. But Lou, the news this week, not that much, but can you hit us with some of the hot stuff that came out?
Yeah. We'll start outside of the MCU and DC talk. David Filoni got promoted to Chief Creative Officer. So if anyone is familiar with him, he essentially is reviving the Star Wars franchise on the heels of the success from Ahsoka. It seems like they're trying to get everything under, one umbrella and kick this off right. That's big. That's big. When someone gets appointed to a creative position in today's day and age, that matters. And I think Spider Brando, you had sent it off stream. He's the only thing that's really carrying the Star Wars franchise and just pulling them forward. So put him on the tier with James Gunn and Kevin Feige potentially, of kind of being those figureheads. Couple other pieces. Speaking of James Gunn, Superman Legacy casting. We had Nicholas Hoult casted as Lex Luthor. We have Skylar Gisondo as Jimmy Olsen, and then Sarah Sampai as Eve Teschmacher. So how do you guys feel about, Superman Legacy? The casting is rounding out nicely.
The fact that they're going as deep as they are in terms of characters, which I know for some people they're going to hear Jimmy Olsen isn't that deep. I know he's not. I know. But if you're someone who's never picked up a Superman book in your life, you have no freaking idea who Jimmy Olsen is. You might remember him as the guy that got murked in Batman versus Superman or Man of Steel.
I think it was Man of Steel.
Whatever movie, we don't know because he was in there for all of 5 minutes, right?
Yeah.
So, Jimmy Olsen is a deeper cut for less than casual fans. And Eve Teschmacher, I'll be honest, even I don't know that much about, but she's an evil henchwoman of Lex Luthor, who's also in love with him, but I don't know if he's in love with her. So it'll be interesting. But Nicholas Hoult as Lex Luthor, I think that's the big one, right?
Yeah.
That's the big meat and potatoes out of this. What I'm curious to see, though, is how big a role is Lex going to play in the movie?
This movie feels a lot more foundational than I think people initially thought. And for me, if you've been listening to the Point3 podcast, one of my biggest gripes and complaints about the DCEU was starting with Man of Steel specifically and keeping the scope of characters very small. It was hard to really branch out and add more depth and layers. And that's something that I personally want to talk about as we get into our favorite DC characters, of why we're choosing some people. And again, it kind of feels very similar, in my opinion, to when these characters and casting, they're announced. It's not necessarily to be like, oh my gosh, like there's so many characters that how is everyone going to fit on screen and all that kind of stuff. World building, establish your credibility, establish your characters, and let them go. That is something I think that MCU fans are struggling with, is we're getting a full dedicated establishment of characters, and everyone we're looking at with a microscope being like, how big are you supposed to be? And they're like, not really. They're just kind of here. I feel like that's the kind of nice piece that Superman Legacy is getting, is just, let's put them out there, build a world. These people do exist, and they're going to help shape Superman and this new DCU very nicely.
Lex can definitely be one of those characters that, like, to me, he's your third movie villain. No. He'll be a villain throughout, and I think will be a cause for a lot of the troubles that Superman will face. Personally, one of my picks that I have for one of those DC characters that I want to see is actually a villain that I truly can think that Lex can be behind and can cause a major problem for Superman. So we'll see how. We'll see. We'll talk about that later. But I think he's one of those, you play him up, and then he's your main villain in the third movie. And that's when he gets his power suit, starts fighting Superman hand to hand. Kind of like Thanos, I'll do it myself.
Yeah.
Shout out to the ambulance back there.
Well, listen, Nicholas Hoult casting, to me at least, indicates that this is a long-term play with Lex. I think someone who can be very committed to his roles traditionally, very attached to them. I like the casting. I know everyone's like, he doesn't look the part. Shout out Pedro Pascal and Reed Richards, Mr. Fantastic, but that's not what it takes. Someone committed to the character and really bringing their interpretation of who they are to live action. I'm for it. I like it.
Spider-Man.
I was gonna say, we have 2 responses from our social media poll the other day with asking people how they've reacted to the Lex Luthor casting. We have none other than Rome's was not confident in his casting and wanted someone with more gravity or more menacing presence in there. Which I haven't really seen much of Nicholas Holt's work besides what he was Beast in like First Class and or Days of Future Past, was it? Both of them? Yeah.
He got a lot of praise in Renfield.
Yeah, he was good. Yeah. I haven't seen Renfield. And then the other one was just there's a lot of hate. A lot of hate towards it.
Well, what I was gonna ask you, Spider Brando, because I know initially you told us as well that you were kind of like meh on it. You think you could kind of like explain why? Is it that you just don't know him that well?
I don't really know him or like Lex Luthor as a character that well, so I don't really like have an opinion if it's good or not. I thought he was a good Beast, and the roles he's played Beast in. But I don't know. I don't really see him. I feel like Lex Luthor would kind of be like, what's his what's the guy's name in, I forgot his name. Iron Man 1, the bald guy. That
Obadiah.
Yeah, Obadiah. I feel like Lex Luthor would kind of be like that type of menacing. But like I said, I don't know his full character arc or comic history that much.
Here, let me throw this out here to that point, because I think that's something that I am seeing a lot with people who are looking for a certain type of casting, right? We had Dave Bautista, someone like that, of kind of that businessman power guy, almost like a Fisk, if you will, of like, when I say jump, you jump, and if you don't, here's a Cadillac door. I think this
Jeff Bezos.
I think that the thing that Nicholas Hoult could bring to a Lex Luthor, I think on the initial project, is curiosity, and how you can really present that to the audience from the standpoint of like, who is this character? Because again, they're establishing a new Superman, and I think in the DCU that curiosity came from Batman more than not. You know what I mean? Of like, I don't understand you, but you're a threat. I need to stop you. Versus someone who's like, this is a science experiment. what is his effect on the earth? What is his effect on this? And then ultimately playing in like, I want to be that god. I want to be this type of character. And then that's when we get a character shift in movie 2. And then ultimately he tries to find a way to do it. That's what I'm looking for. And I think based on what he's done in the past, he could portray that.
To me, Lex Luthor is a lot more than just an evil businessman, though.
Yeah.
And I'm not calling out anybody. I just think that a lot of people, that's all they see him as an evil businessman. And unfortunately, Batman versus Superman and Jesse Eisenberg, that's the route they went to portray him as the typical crazy, eccentric businessman. And yes, that is what he is. That's part of what he is, though. That's just not all of it. There's layers to him, and I think Nicholas Hoult can really bring that. Especially when he is supposed to really be the arch nemesis and rival of Superman. Maybe it can start off as something where they're almost friendly towards each other. Maybe that's what they do in this first one, and then by the end of it, something happens where Lex now has a shift in how he views Superman, and then they explore that through the rest of it. But to me, I think having someone like Dave Bautista, yes, he brings a presence, and yes, Dave Bautista, fantastic actor, truly, but I don't think he would fit a Lex Luthor just because he's, if we're going off looks alone, one, he's just too freaking big. I've seen Dave Bautista in person. The man made his security guards look like children. Yeah. I'm sorry. Like, the dude is huge. He would make David Cornsworth look like a baby.
Well, I mean, you saw that gym photo of David Cornsworth.
But he's not Dave Bautista.
Guy stacks.
But he's not Dave Bautista. You know what I mean?
I mean, listen, to your point there, the one thing that I think live action has done a very poor job of is making Lex Luthor feel like Batman. Now, hear me out. There's Bruce Wayne and there's Batman. Is Batman Bruce Wayne? Are they one and the same, right? You feel like there's two pieces to that character specifically. That's what a Lex Luthor is missing, that I feel like the animated Justice League kind of did best. To ultimately, when he did kind of reveal himself and he's like, I am Lex, I am this, I need to protect, and almost kind of shifted to be like, I'm going to be Earth's greatest protector because you guys don't understand what is at stake here and what's out there. I do. And I'm the only one of us who can really do it from this side of the fence. That's where I ultimately think a Lex Luthor should get to for the DCU. But it is that kind of dual personality of like, there's the daytime Lex and then there's nighttime Lex. Like, that is where I'm looking for that dynamic for his character.
And that's why in something like Injustice, where his alternate universe is a hero, and it's not something that is too far-fetched to think about, because Lex is one of those characters that if you tilt him in one direction, he could be right, but if you tilt him in another, then he's obviously incredibly wrong. And I think that's what they need to portray. And I think Nicholas Hoult can do that. But again, people think, no, he needs to be evil all the time. Lord. He needs to be Kingpin. And it's like, no, he doesn't, because fundamentally those characters are just so different. But it's been a long time since we've gotten that Lex. I mean, animated Justice League was early, mid 2000s. So it's been almost 20 years by the time that we'll see him. It's a long time for a lot of people, and that image is just very different. And when you have Jesse Eisenberg's role as your last remembrance of it, then I can see why people don't think he might be a good fit. But I think he can pull it off really well.
I do too. It'll be interesting as we get closer to that time, having that conversation when more plot details come out and we get some more information of really who that Lex is going to be. So definitely worth noting. One big piece of news that came out, rumored, good insider source that has some credibility on X, formerly known as Twitter, mentioned that Silver Surfer is getting a gender swap, and that the Silver Surfer that will be appearing in the MCU will not be Norrin Rad, but essentially will be Norn Rad, just a female version. I feel very passionate about this in the MCU talks lately, and I'll let you guys touch on this. I just want to say one quick thing. Do your research. If you're watching this and you see these rumors and you're just like, gosh darn it, here they go again, taking these characters we know and love and flipping them. Not necessarily the case, right? Galactus being a herald of Galactus, there's a lot of layers to understand when it comes to these characters. And I feel like people are just looking at a lot of things right now from what do they look like? That's it. I want to see a man on screen. I want to see a certain type of person on screen. That's what people are kind of saying. And you can't really have the conversation of like, okay, you know, it's a fictional universe of an alien race, and we're out here placing earthly genders on every single thing we can to be like, oh, by the way, not getting too far into it. It's just open-mindedness is kind of where I'm going with it. But what do you guys think of that rumor and potentially what it could mean for the MCU?
Yeah, to your point, I did a quick research before. When I first saw that, I did a very, very quick Google search. All I did was Silver Surfer female. First thing that pops up is that, yes, there is a female version of the Silver Surfer who is not Norrin Rad. It's a completely different character. I forget her name.
Juno.
There you go. She is just Silver Surfer as a female. They can definitely go down that route, and if they do, I think that's cool because you can have it to where Norrin Rad is a now rejected herald of Galactus, and you can really flesh out his story both within the Fantastic Four and outside of Fantastic Four incredibly well.
Yes.
Because again, what I think people don't really realize is that there are more than one herald of Galactus. And there's people that know that within the comic, but he goes through them constantly. They're just a conduit to him, and they're replaceable. So it's very easy that he needs a Silver Surfer because he knows how powerful they can be. I wouldn't be surprised if he just took someone else and made her, but you still can get Norrin Rad and that incredible story and that incredible character. So everybody put your pitchforks down. It's okay.
Spider Brando, how excited, knowing that Silver Surfer has existed from a live action standpoint, does that have any effect on, not that it's a male or female or whoever it is, but that they would potentially change the first instance of a Silver Surfer in the MCU? Like, do you want to see a recreation or a redo or a reboot of the old Silver Surfer that we saw for the Fantastic Four? What are your thoughts from that standpoint?
You're muted.
I swear I didn't mute that. I lost my train of thought. I don't want to see the old. I want to see a new one, just like a whole fresh take. I don't want the old Fantastic Four Silver Surfer to just like come back or whatnot, or be the same one. Might as well start fresh, and this is it's an interesting decision to, if they were to go with the gender swap. I don't know much about Silver Surfer either, but from what you guys talked about with the research, I mean, it seems, why not in the MCU? I'm all for it.
The hard part is like that openness, kind of like what you were mentioning, you know, just why not tell that story, right? Open to it. And Hero Scroll, you mentioned it too, knowing that this isn't it's our first introduction to a surfer, but it might not be the first surfer in this sort of world, you know? Mm-hmm. So from that lore, even if it is an Earth 826 or an 838, like, it's the multiverse. It could be our first. We don't know where these Fantastic Four characters are even coming from.
The interesting thing too is they could very easily change Surfer's backstory and I think still fit it and make it true to the character. Because to me, what if you just make it his wife, Norrin Rad's wife, and now you have a very interesting story where maybe Norrin Rad wants to give himself up to Galactus, and teams up with the Fantastic Four in his own way just to get to her, back to her. Like, we don't know where they could go with this. And to me, Marvel understands that Silver Surfer is a very important character to the Fantastic Four lore in general. So I don't think they would just completely throw away the OG. They're just going to do something new. And I think that's one of your best ways where you could do something new and still keep it like very true to a source material.
Yeah. And I want to make note as well that when there were rumors of a Silver Surfer special presentation that was supposed to drop after Fantastic Four or right before Fantastic Four, there were no conversations of a female surfer being the lead in that special presentation. So even to that point, if we do get Surfer 1 in the movie and we get a special presentation of Surfer 2, further deepening that story and fleshing out that mini character arc, but also the new world the Fantastic Four is going to introduce from a cosmic or however they go that route with them. Again, we don't know anything. Like, we don't even know anything about the core Fantastic Four. So for me, I'm open to seeing what they do. I'm not going to write it off. I think they're on a good path right now with everything, and I'm interested to see where it goes. Is it time?
I was gonna say I have softened up on the Pedro as a read take from last week that I was a little indifferent on.
What happened? What changed?
I don't know. I just thought about it more and kind of like looked into his past works and stuff, and re-listened to the Point3 podcast episode of you guys talking about it, and it swayed me to like it a lot.
I just think it goes back to this overarching thing, just to put a bow on everything that we kind of talk about and we have been talking about with rumored castings. Looks aside, for us here, I think all of us really look at what can this actor or actress do for the character themselves, and what can this character do for the project and then greater MCU or DCU or Prime or whatever it might be. Everyone brings something unique, and the hard part is when we don't give people a chance to perform on these stages, it kind of cheapens the launch, right? When you look at a Miss Marvel, for example, it was tough to get on board for a lot of people with Miss Marvel, but people loved Iman Vellani in the beginning. People love her for the Marvels now. People are going to love her in the future. And now she went from being like, why is this being showcased on ABC 7, whatever it might be for your channel, to now being like, oh my gosh, yes, make her the heart of the MCU moving forward, please.
Yeah.
You gotta take a chance on some of these, and some people are duds, some are studs or girl studs or whatever you want to call it, and I don't know. You don't know until you see it. So, yeah. But we have something very exciting coming up. Hero Scroll.
So, in the wake of all these castings that Superman Legacy has been coming out with, the cast is shaping up nicely, and we're getting a bunch of characters that we thought we would never see, characters that we've been waiting to see for a little bit now. So what we decided is to make a list of 5 DC characters that we want to see in the DCU. And we're going to give you our reasons why. To the people in the chat, we invite you to drop down your picks as well. So if you want to see somebody, let us know. Tell us why. Love to put you up here. But we're going to do that. And we're also going to give you an honorable mention. That one will be kind of a quick, just, this is who we would like to see. We're not going to give much explanation. But the rest, we're going to... This comes from both a kind of personal bias and also just people that are characters that we think would fit really well within James Gunn's DC universe. and where they could fit in really well, shape it out nicely. Because again, what we want to see, and it sounds crazy to say this, but we don't mean it in any bad way to slander any other projects. We want this to rival the DCU or the MCU. Jesus Christ, we want it to rival the MCU, and maybe even surpass it. Because what people don't realize is that DC Comics has a lot of characters that we have not seen in any capacity, or have seen. There you go.
Thick.
Or have seen incredibly little of. And some of these characters, man, can really give Marvel characters and just blow them out of the water.
Yeah.
Not even give them a run for their money. Just blow them out of the water. And I think some of the characters, at least I look at my list, and some of the characters that I have, I think can really do that and make the DCU something special.
Yeah, and before we jump into it, I mean, again, you have your assumed characters for the DCU. Batman, Wonder Woman, Superman, Flash, Aquaman. Like you're gonna have some core staples that we're definitely gonna see in here. But I think the picks that we all have, again, from that space, what you're talking about, is it personal? Where they're gonna fit in characters and reasons why they're essentially going to create competition, right? That's kind of, I know that people are like, oh, it doesn't matter. I'm a DC fan. I don't care about Marvel, and vice versa. Competition is great. And if you're looking at it from an MCU standpoint right now, fans are struggling to stay on board. Fans aren't finding things interesting. This is going to be a way to just inject life back into the superhero cinematic genre that has been missing. And competition is very healthy in a lot of ways. Unfortunately, Amazon Prime isn't there yet to do it. So really enjoy this list. Interact if you can. I think we have some really, really awesome additions and reasons why we've chosen who we've chosen. But with that, we'll go through honorable mentions.
Honorable mentions.
Spider Bizzle, you want to kick us off?
My honorable mention was Bizarro.
All right.
I could live without him, but just knowing that they got Lex Luthor for Legacy, and there's been a lot of rumors for Brainiac, it would be cool to finish off like a potential Superman trilogy with Bizarro, or even in a different order with but I want to see him in there. I think he's a cool character. Great concept of like a anti-Superman, and who wouldn't want to see them two duke it out on screen?
I love that.
Like every Superman villain that, I'm gonna rescind that statement because I haven't seen a lot of Superman movies. A lot of the Superman movies that I've recently feel like I've seen of them have just been like, there's Darkseid in Justice League. Drawing a blank on the villain's name in Man of Steel. That was in The Flash also.
Zod.
But you haven't really seen him go against like a true freaking someone that could go toe for toe, like head for head.
In an interesting way, for sure.
Yeah.
Bizarro is one of my favorite Superman villains. And yeah,
that's big time. That's big time. Okay, well, I'm pumped for the rest of your list. Hero Scroll?
Sinestro.
Hey, okay.
I know we've seen Sinestro.
Those are two bangers. All right.
I know we've seen Sinestro and Green Lantern, and to be quite honest, I rewatched that movie about a year ago with my wife when we were dating at the time. We rewatched it for a date night, and I was like, man, this movie's not as bad. And Sinestro is one of the good parts, the way that he kind of comes in and obviously thinks of himself as higher. I'd love to see that fleshed out. Love to see I'd love to see him fully in a yellow ring. I don't want the transition. I'd rather them kind of show us through flashbacks and stuff how great of a Green Lantern he was, and whoever that Green Lantern is to try to live up to him. I think that would be cool. Or not live up to him, but kind of erase his memory, because it kind of hangs as a stain for the core. So yeah, Sinestro.
I like that. I think I have a slightly different approach in a way. And my honorable mention will be included because I wanted a really unique choice of power sets, backgrounds, thematic elements, something for this future cinematic universe to really show off different levels. So for me, my honorable mention, street level hero, someone who's very grounded in a urban setting that's more community focused, however, has one of the coolest power sets. And my honorable mention is Jefferson Pierce, Black Lightning. I know we've seen him recently. I know we've seen him recently from the CW, just a handful of years ago. But man, I think this is a character that could absolutely dominate the street level portions of the DCU.
Okay, I'm not trying to challenge your pick. I just kind of want to know him or Static though.
I think Static would be great, and I think Static would be a fan favorite. However, I think having a Tobias White could fulfill a larger villain for a solo movie or someone who could kind of spearhead any sort of crossovers in that way. I think Static would be cool, but I think Black Lightning would keep more of a serious tone, where Static would be kind of that lighter piece that they could introduce with Young Justice or someone, along those lines. He would fit nicely with a Blue Beetle.
I like that. All right. Number 5, Spider Brando. We might have to change your name to DC Brando for today.
Oh, shoot.
But
take the keys away.
Hit us with your first pick. You're muted.
Dude, I am a mess. My 5th person on. Wait, we're going 5 through 1, right? Or 1 through 5?
Whoever you want to mention first.
Yeah, whoever. Yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna go with Wally West. We got Barry Allen, and we got Barry Allen Flash in the DCEU. So why not let some of this new generation and young folk learn more about Wally West? He needs more respect on his name in the mainstream media. Kind of got X'd out of the Flash CW show. I thought he was great up until his departure on there. But I want to see more of him in just like a movie in a live action style. The CW budget just ain't it.
Yeah.
Like I want to see his true speed, because I know at some points he ends up becoming faster than Barry Allen Flash. He goes through a whole bunch of cool villains and similarities with Barry Allen Flash. And I think it'll be a cool new way to just kind of like open up the Flash family and the Flashverse a lot. And like a new, just this generation take on it.
I like that. Yeah, we need redemption.
Mm-hmm.
That is true.
Especially after that last Flash movie, cheeks.
We do. We need a good Flash.
Yeah.
And I think Wally could save that. So, Lou.
Oh, okay. I'm going to throw out Starfire for this one. We're going to be pulling in cosmic pieces here. For those of you that aren't familiar with Starfire, essentially she's going to be an alien princess with energy-based powers. The key piece here would essentially be the building of the cosmic side and the intergalactic stories that can come from this. I know we've seen her as recently as the Titans TV show that was on HBO, but the crossovers, the characters that you can pull in, again with the Teen Titans, it's just a way for her to kind of give a perspective to the DCU of, I am an outsider who's trying to learn the ways of what it means to be human and an earthling, if you will. But also, again, her power set's fantastic, and with the proper budget, probably one of the most visually striking characters we may ever see on the big screen.
That's so true, man. Because a live action Starfire with her like actual lit up hair would be sick. And I think the relationships that we could see her make with everybody, that's a good pick. That's a good pick. Now we're starting with bangers
That's
today.
just bang, bang, bang.
Two. I'm gonna make it a third back to back.
All right.
Big Barda.
Oh,
I want to see Big Barda. So this comes from I recently read the Tom King Mr. Miracle run.
okay.
And I finished it last month. And in that short time, she has become one of my favorite comic book characters ever. She's strong and imposing. Her power set's nothing too crazy. She's just incredibly powerful. But it's more the character herself and what she's gone through and how that shapes her and her relationship with Mr. Miracle, I think is awesome. And like Lou said, it shapes out a world of DC, a part of the world of DC that we haven't seen, and that's Apocalypse. She was raised on Apocalypse and basically tortured her whole life to become and bred to be a warrior of Darkseid, a Fury. And I think seeing that aspect of that side of the DC universe is something that nothing else in comics has done.
Yeah.
Or in comic book movies, where
right.
I would say the closest thing is Gamora and Nebula's relationship. But they kind of tell you that instead of showing you that.
Yeah.
And I think us seeing that happen to Big Barda, be it a show, or I think this could work really well as a movie, to be quite honest. You could make it either about her or just Mr. Miracle, and she's a big part of that movie.
Yeah.
I think that would be something truly special to see, where you really see how bad some of these characters have it. And a lot of movies just kind of tell you instead of showing you. But if you get a full hour-long, full season of a TV show where they're trying to escape Apocalypse, or a movie where they're trying to escape Apocalypse, man, Spider Brando Chef would just certify that, because I would love that.
I like that. That would be interesting. That would be something that would be brand new. That could be a type of character similar to like what Spider Brando was saying with Wally West, of a character that you would really feel for in a lot of different ways.
And to be also quite honest, you need someone who, I'm not going to say for her to fight Wonder Woman, but to fight alongside with and to make her feel like just as powerful and imposing. Man, Big Barda. And even if originally you make her a villain as a part of your series, man, that fight would be insane. Yeah. Give it to us. Give it to us.
Okay. Well, do we run it back?
Run it
Next
back.
one?
Number 4, Spider Brando.
Martian Manhunter.
Hey, okay.
Sorry, I love
Need to see that man. Manhunter. I love him. Ever since he's one of my favorite characters growing up on the animated Justice League. I remember I had a lot of his toys were pretty customizable, and always one that stood out was obviously his signature with the red X going down it.
Mm-hmm.
I just loved having that. He was a cool character in the show, always reminded me. I was a big Dragon Ball fan at the time, and he low-key reminded me of Piccolo. A lot. Yeah,
100%.
So as a kid, I always had like that association. And the DCU failed us with Manhunter. Kept on years and years. They're like, oh yeah, he's coming, and then oh yeah, they had to redo a deleted post-credit scene just to make a final cut of a film for a movie with a universe that no longer exists. So I want to see a good interpretation of him. He will be great for like the cosmic space side.
Exactly.
Like you brought up with Starfire as well. And just a freaking badass character.
That's someone who's on my list here. I don't know if you have him on your list, but I'll piggyback off of you and not even play around with it. He's my second cosmic character that I have on my list of 5. And a big reason is really what you said, is him being kind of that outcast, that outsider, you visibly see that he is not like the others. Fun part about that is his shape-shifting abilities, which makes it really, really cool. Shout out to Invincible for having their own kind of version of him right now.
Yeah.
But the big thing that I always wanted to see, and the reason why I like Martian Manhunter the most, there's two reasons. One, he has the ability to give you kind of introspective point of view and explain a lot of things and fill gaps and stories and characters and stuff. Like, he is that piece that could be missing from like Superman. I don't know anything about Krypton. I don't know anything about it, you know, X, Y, and Z. What's out here? It's something John Johns could know, but ultimately, this is the type of character who, when we do see a version of him come on screen, you're going to fall in love with this type of character. And the big reason why is because of his themes of isolation and loss. And exploring his backstory, that's the kind of character that when it comes time for him to make the big save and he may lose his life, if you will, that's going to hurt. That's the kind of character where it's just like, ooh, for a lot of reasons, that one is no good. Plus, he has tons of ties to the Justice League, and it's a way he can expand the DCU in ways few characters, I think, can as quickly as he could.
Good point. Yeah, no, he's not on my list, but he almost made it on there, but I had a feeling someone else was going to bring him up. And touche on that, or not touche. I second and third to that. So, but my number 4 is who I think they should make the villain for the second Superman movie. And that's Parasite. Parasite normally is not one of those like major villains that people think about ever. I think he was on the animated show a couple times, and people just kind of forget that he exists. But there's been multiple people who have been Parasite, and I think they could really twist this character to where they can morph him into something that Lex creates to fight Superman, or just something that just really, you know, can be a part of his backstory. Maybe he's from Krypton. They switch it that way. I don't know. Whatever they do, I just hope that it's one of those villains that really gives Superman a run from his money, because for those that don't know, what he does is he basically is able to absorb your powers. Mm-hmm. And when he does, he gains basically your intelligence, your knowledge, your power, again, your power set. And I think it would be a cool way to do a like Superman versus Superman fight without having to bring in like just another Kryptonian or just someone, you know, who's super strong. If Lex somehow makes that and then sets him out into the world. And the cool thing is that Parasite also takes on the weaknesses of the person that he's absorbing. So I think it'd be really cool if through that movie, that's how they find out about kryptonite. I think kryptonite should not be brought in till the last movie as like the silver bullet to Superman. And I think dropping the bombshell that Lex finds out in the second movie through Parasite, maybe that's the sole reason he makes Parasite, is to figure out what weakness Superman has, and then to use that in the third movie. I think just Parasite would be one of those cool vessels to further the story and give us something different that we haven't seen for Superman.
I think it would be I want to circle back to that end piece with kryptonite later on before we get to this, because I think we can connect some storylines with a few characters that I believe are going to be coming up. I think it'd be super cool. But Spider-B 3,
number 3, since we had a similar number 3, going back to going back to Flash with Reverse Flash. I need to
Oh,
see him live action. That's something that the Flash movie should have done. They're dealing with the whole kind of Flashpoint thing, but they said, "Psych, just gonna make everyone just not care about who killed Barry's mom in that movie." I need Reverse Flash, and him with the Wally West pairing would be great way to do it.
that is like I wish that they would have stuck with Reverse Flash in the DCEU and made him like the ultimate big bad, and really executed Flashpoint in obviously a much better way. But I mean, how do you from a villain standpoint or an antagonist standpoint, Reverse Flash is just someone who, how do you not want them?
Yeah,
It's such a menace. Like, there's always that. Every time I hear Reverse Flash, there's that one meme. It's always a meme dialogue of him doing dirty stuff to Barry. It makes me laugh every time.
I know which one you're talking about. I know which one you're talking about.
He has the power to do that, which is like insane to think of.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, I'd love to see Reverse Flash though.
I really liked what's the actor's the actor that played him in the Flash CW series? That's something.
Yeah.
I would like to see him as like Reverse Flash again, because I thought he killed it during that series. The suit was good. He was a great actor. And I don't know. That would be awesome to see him in live action as well, or like with a full movie budget compared to a CW budget.
Just do the Injustice 2 fight scene between them.
Oh yeah,
and animated in the same way, or the special effects. Do it the same way that Makari and Eternals did. You're getting one of the best things you've ever seen.
Yep.
Listen, my next one does need a budget and should be coming down the pike, and will fall into a certain genre that they mentioned, or at least James Gunn did when he announced the slate for Chapter 1, Gods and Monsters. It is a monster that falls kind of in between kind of street level, in my opinion, and the supernatural. I'll say it fits in the natural world. Swamp Thing. That is going to be my next on the list. Alec Holland. This is a character that I really want to see, because I think technology is at a point where we can finally get a character like this that'll be interesting. It's not going to look cheesy. Depends on how they decide to do it. But I really think that this character specifically could just be a way to show up and bridge the gap in other pieces of the DCU, but also give you kind of a look of, not everyone is as shiny and bright as Superman. Not everyone is as beautiful and as Wonder Woman, and not everyone's as rich as, Bruce Wayne. And it's a way to be like, Swamp Thing is going to be kind of like a dark, gritty, horror-esque type of genre within a superhero genre. And the antagonist that they could put in this movie is someone who could be extremely relatable, but the practical effects, the graphics, like, they could have so much fun with Swamp Thing, and I think that they ultimately will. I just think it'll be a really cool character that I hope they beat the MCU to the punch with, and kind of go on a full-fledged story. Most people that I hear that are really into Swamp Thing love that character.
I hear that a lot as well. I'll be honest, he's one of those that I don't know too much about, but I do want to get more into him.
Yeah.
But everything I hear about him makes him sound like just a fantastic character, and I think it would fit. He's one of those that can really show up in multiple parts of the DCU, like you said. So.
Yep. All right, here, let's go. What do we got?
All right, number 3. If you know me, you know that I love a certain subset of characters within the DC universe, and I'm not hiding that, and I never will. Number 3 is Atrocitus. the leader of the Red Lanterns. And
sick and Injustice.
He was one of my mains. Not only do I think he's a sick looking character, because he absolutely is, but to me, a big part of what they need to do with the Green Lantern, that has to be in its own pocket of DC. Yes, it is like a cosmic side, but I really feel like all the Lantern things need to be its own like subset. And one of the biggest part are the other Lantern cores, besides Yellow. And I think Red is the next big one, being Rage. And again, him being the leader fits perfectly. Atrocitus has a tragic backstory. And although he is someone who has just this immense hate and is like one of those unstoppable forces that will just, if you're in his way, you're gonna get it. So I think the cool thing is that he could almost fit in like a Punisher type role for the Lanterns, where sometimes he's on the side of goods, other times he might be butting heads with the Lanterns. And the cool thing is that it was later on revealed that he's the responsible one for Abinsur's death, which then leads to Hal Jordan becoming the Green Lantern. So I just think he's one of those characters that there's a lot of history that you can pack in with him. And again, just having someone who can play for both sides, especially again for the Green Lantern side of things, I think would be really cool. And then you also get his cool evil cat. So
yes,
Dexter.
Yes. You nailed it. The interesting thing with that is history. Like, that is not to pull Star Wars back in, but for a second of like, I'm not really into it. You guys know this. But one thing that I'm hearing that people are talking about more is like that lore and that history and building a lot of these pieces out. And these future projects can go that route.
Mm-hmm.
And I think with this sub pocket within a sub pocket, these stories can go as deep as they want them to. And they're interesting enough that I think they would garner greenlighting these projects. To where the rub with the Green Lantern Corps is, I almost picture them not being, I don't want to jump ahead or anything like that if you have them, but I just want to throw this out here. It's interesting that you said that, because I think that would really play if he's kind of, is he good? Is he bad? Is he the Punisher piece? That'll really help if the audience feels iffy on the Green Lantern Corps themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's the case and they really get that across, oh my gosh, like that would be a left field, like no one asked for it, but we got it type of thing. And it's like, yes, like that's how good these stories can be.
Mm-hmm.
So solid tier 3 gents. Very solid.
Number 2.
Got 2. I'm excited to hear you guys next 2. We've had some bangers, and so far only one overlap, which is kind of crazy.
That is very crazy.
My number 2 might be an overlap, because I feel like someone else has this. One with Red Hood and the Bat Family. Oh, not and the Bat Family, but I want to see Red Hood as kind of like the delve off with the Bat Family. I love that storyline. Feel so bad for Jason Todd and Crowbars. Do not mix well at all. But it's such a dark story that is always so captivating to just go through in any form of media, between comics, video games, DC animated stuff. And if they could pull it off live action in the DCU and kind of like bring up the whole, that could be like a segue into Talia al Ghul and the Al Ghul storylines as well, and branch off the DCU into like that type of core, or not core, that's a bad word. You used a good term for it earlier when you're talking about a subsection, to like a good subsection, and expand the Bat Family. I think Red Hood would be like a great way to go about it.
Do they bring back Jensen Ackles? to reprise his animated to live action jump.
He might be Batman though, so
I just want to see him. His voice in that anime movie will forever be goated, in my opinion.
Yeah.
His voice acting was just.
The one question I have, Spider Brando, where in Red Hood's journey is he though? Is he like just beginning Red Hood, or is he a little more into it and he's now kind of a part of the Bat family? Where's he at?
I'd like to see the progression from being at like the kind of the darkest part in his journey and then coming back into the light of the Bat family. I think that would be a really cool spot, especially with this whole James Gunn theme on like legacy and hope. Seeing someone rise, fall, and then kind of like rise back up again. I feel like it would fit that right on the money.
I like that.
Big fan. All right, I'm gonna throw this out here real quick before I jump into it. I have 2 characters left. They're both would fall into the supernatural realm. This character is essentially what we'll call an occult detective. I'm seeing some wheels turn here. John Constantine. That's where I'm going with this one. A fantastic way that the DCU can add a darker and grittier and just kind of a real, almost something that I felt like Netflix did really well for the Marvel universe. But just really that supernatural side of things and just handling the consequences of a lot of things that happen within the DCU from that side of the story. And almost, I'm not going to say like the janitor of the supernatural piece, but another character who can jump in, very similar to kind of how he did in the Arrowverse in a way. But just a character who can show up when needed. He doesn't have to have his own solo film, although that would be fantastic if he did get a new solo film, but someone who could be a nice 1B for a lot of stories. And for my top character that I have here, I think very, good supplemental piece from that. But I think that would be a feel almost in a way how Butcher feels in The Boys, where you get that exterior, but underneath, there's a lot more depth and layers to this character. And when they ultimately do dive into who he's about, you're just like, wow, okay, so that's what we're talking about. Only other piece that I would say that would be really cool to this, I had to do a little digging on this, but he's worked with Swamp Thing. He's worked with my number one character. So the people that I have to build out kind of that Earth natural base, it could be a nice play here for them. So for me, I think Constantine would be a cool addition. But someone they could definitely lean if they go that streaming route with Max and those types of things as well to kind of help add value to that standpoint and bounce from movie to show.
He's one of those characters that can also bounce around and show up in Superman Legacy for a cameo, a Batman. He can show up everywhere and it would fit really well. He's one of those pieces that you can just he's a wild card essentially.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
I think that's how they should treat him.
Yep, exactly.
Good point. Very nice pick. Number 2, I'm going to follow along the lines of what Spider Brando said and keep it Batman related, not Bat family. I wouldn't consider him a Bat family member, but he is Batman related. John Paul Valley, Azrael. I think Azrael would be a fantastic, basically dark mirror of Batman. I wouldn't say maybe don't make him outright evil at first, but make him a little more brutal than Batman. Make him a little bit more willing to do things that Batman might not be willing to do. And I think it would be a very, very cool dynamic if because I feel like what they're setting up for is, because we know that it's going to be a Batman Brave and the Bold, it really feels like eventually what they'll want to do is have Damian take up the mantle of Batman. At the end of the story, I feel like that's where James Gunn wants to go, almost like a Rocket Raccoon, and he's like, "No, the story's been about you."
Yeah.
I have a feeling that's what he wants, and a good antagonist to kind of play throughout that whole story would be Azrael, where maybe at first Batman passes it down to him. And he thinks about passing it down to Azrael because Azrael can do what it takes, where Damian can as well, especially being raised in League of Assassins. But Azrael just has the factor that Batman knows. And maybe he doesn't want his son to have that. And having someone like Azrael, it would also be a very cool way to get your Nightfall suit without having Bane, because as sad as it sounds, I don't think we're ever going to get a Bane again, sadly. At least not as your main antagonist.
Yeah.
And that sucks, because I think a Nightfall story would shoot Bane into an even higher stratosphere as a villain, and would shoot John Paul Valley as a insane character. But yeah, I think it would be really cool to see.
Wow, that one wasn't on my radar, but that would be a very interesting dynamic that they could take. That could keep. See, here's the thing. What you had said right there. If they start this and there's a finish point, there's ways that they can always continue this on for a very, very long time. And that's a good choice. That's a really good choice. I think that's a really good choice.
That man in Arkham. Was he in Arkham City or Arkham Knight? Or both? Both? Loved him. Suit is so cool.
His suit
always
is
reminds
awesome.
me of the Arachnite suit.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, kind of.
Very similar.
Yeah.
That whole just red and white.
His Batman suit though.
I love him. Yeah. I forgot about him. That is a great choice.
All right.
Number one.
Spider B
is Deathstroke. Love Deathstroke. The original Deadpool, as some may say. Oh, that's a nice pop.
No, it's a feature. When my day is going south, I'm just like, do I don the mask?
Think about it every day. I would like to see like a Teen Titans Deathstroke, and then kind of pull in the whole Teen Titans subsection through him. And Teen Titans, I feel like they could be good live action. I haven't watched the Titans show on HBO, so I have no comment with anything that's been going on with that, or how like effects or stuff has been going on. I remember the first season got a little hate from a lot of people on the internet, but I've heard great things about the rest of the show so far.
Up and down, to be honest.
I would love to see Deathstroke and Slade Wilson, and just the last shot that we saw of him from Batman v Superman post-credit scene. Yeah.
Or Justice League, no?
Justice League.
Justice League. Justice League. Joe Manganiello. I don't know how to pronounce it. Manganiello.
He's gonna beat you up for that.
Yeah, I know. You said that about the wrong person. He's gonna show up and what was my last name? I'm just like, oh.
Yeah. Now we can't have him on the podcast because he's a nerd, and now we can't.
Or if he does come on the podcast to correct me, and then
beat you
off the stroke side, I would take that. I would take the L for that. Oh, anyways, I love Deathstroke. He had, I'm not gonna lie, Teen Titans Go to the movies. Phenomenal movie. I don't care what anybody says about Teen Titans Go.
They're funny, man.
That was a great show, great movie, and they had Deathstroke as pretty much the main villain in that movie. It was obviously his very Teen Titans Go style and like comedic, but he was still freaking badass in there, and like a kid's cartoon style movie. Oh man, I want to see him live action, splitting heads, stabbing people, doing all the stuff Deadpool does, but not as comedic. I would love it. He has a
All
really cool
business.
story arc as well. Like even we saw him a little bit in the Arrowverse,
Mhm.
and if they kind of mix they could even mix some of those elements of his character, into the DCU. I mean, a street level addition.
Yeah, it's a solid pick. I had to eliminate him from my list, but it was someone like he's one of my favorite characters, DC characters ever.
And it's fair. He oh man, I lost my train of thought where I was gonna say something that I thought would be. Oh, I just remembered. Earlier we were talking about Lex Luthor and Nicholas Holt's casting, and someone said how he's not a menacing presence. And I said something along the lines of how Lex Luthor is just not a menacing character. Deathstroke is. That's what when I think Deathstroke, I need to be like, oh snap, like someone's gonna get it. Whoever it is, be it the Teen Titans, Batman, Green Arrow, whoever you put him up against, they're gonna get it.
It is, in my opinion, for those who are watching this, who are like, I don't know who Deathstroke is, and you guys can correct me if you think I'm way in left field. Think the presence that Winter Soldier had to Cap in Cap 2 before he really flipped script of, you think you're good? Well, I'm just as good, if not better. And if you don't bring an army to stop me or your best, you're going to lose. But think of Winter Soldier, just how imposing that character is, but times like 20.
Yeah.
Like, you don't want to see, if you see Deathstroke, you're done. Like, that is one you just do not want to. And if you do, I'm so sorry. Like, good luck in the afterlife, because it's over. It's just over. It is over. To your point, though, Deathstroke for me got put on the map with the original Teen Titans. Slade.
Oh yeah,
that's it. That's all. Slade. You know him versus Robin, and it was just like that vendetta and that rivalry that went back and forth was awesome. To the point when you see his shadow, he's like, I'm going to abandon the Teen Titans. I need to go after Slade. I don't care what it is. Guess what? Our bad guy's gone. We lost everything. Titan's Tower is destroyed. It's over. But Robin's like, no, I need to find Slade. I need to get him. Like, awesome story. One of the coolest. Love that you brought that up. I guess I'm supposed to talk again. Yeah, I was like, crap. I shouldn't have done that. All right, I'm going to try to keep this as short as I possibly can. My other supernatural pick to round out my top 5 most anticipated characters, Zatanna Zatara, Miss Magic, mysticism, bring something that MCU fans really started to feel in the back end of Scarlet Witch arc. But this is essentially a character who will really take that supernatural element and drive it so much further, because they are kind of one and the same for this specific character. And essentially one thing that stuck out to me most for her was really finding that motivation of her being driven to having that sense of responsibility to maintain a balance between the magical and mortal realms in a way that she can play. And her story is always going to deepen and expand the supernatural side of the DCU. And if they get ahead of something like that before the MCU really does, which I don't know, Agatha may or may not do, it's just a character that I think another one that people would have a hard time not relating with. I think this is a character that could find her own little cult again. A type of character that people are going to dress up as all the time. They're going to reference their profile pics, cosplay. It's someone who, if she gets mainstream, I think can completely take over and be one of the faces next to the Trinity for the DCU. One of the things I was familiar, but I had to do a little research on this, of having one of her top adversaries, and I didn't mention this for the other ones, but I want to mention it for her specifically, the Upside Down Man. So it's a character who's just a force when it comes to the magical realm, but essentially is kind of like a dark counterpart to Zatanna. And I know everyone's just like, oh, the initial villain is just the opposite of whatever you are. They're like power twins and all that kind of stuff. But this would be a cool way to kind of throw that wrench into, here's the thing. If you have a subset of a genre within a genre, there needs to be something that upsets that balance, that calls for these heroes to take action to stop it. So I think this is just a good character that could kind of be that focal point for the supernatural force and have that direct line to Zatanna, but also pull in a lot of the other characters where needed. If they ever get her right on screen, just mark, you heard it here first on the Point3 podcast. Watch her popularity skyrocket.
Yeah, I agree. Very well said, and I don't have anything to add to that.
Hit us with your number one.
This is total personal bias, but I also think he could be such a good focal point for the rest of the DCU. And that's going to be Green Lantern, Kyle Rayner. Kyle Rayner is my personal favorite Green Lantern. In terms of creativity with the ring, unmatched. There's arguable between him and Hal, but to me, I think Kyle takes the cake in his constructs and stuff. But also, in terms of the story that they could tell with him, I think could be awesome. I do think that you're going to have more than one main Green Lantern in the DCU. I think you're going to get John Stewart. I think you're going to get Hal Jordan. But I think Hal Jordan is going to be very much a older Hal Jordan. Maybe not older, but more experienced already. And to me, where we might see him first, if not like at the end of that series that he's going to be in, is he's going to be Parallax. I truly think so. And that gives way for Kyle to come in. And not only could they make Kyle's backstory a tragic one of loss and perseverance of really like going and fighting the poster boy of the Green Lantern Corps, and you can make him win, you can make him lose in like a valiant fight, and then have John Stewart come and beat him. But a way to put a character on the map, that's how you do it. And then not only that, you can make him the new poster boy, because John Stewart never really wants to be that. John Stewart wants to be his own man, his own thing. And I still think maybe he should be the main one, but as a secondary, I think he could be the best number two, if not like number one alongside John Stewart. But then later on, once you start telling things like Blackest Night, if they go down that line, the history that he has with that story, and if you make him the first White Lantern instead, man, like, again, just a moment and the history that character is going to go through and the trials and tribulations that he has, once you give him those moments, it's going to feel so big. And like Zatanna, is just going to skyrocket his popularity into something else. Because I always think for people that know him, he's number 3. Mm-hmm. It's either between John or Hal and then Kyle. Mm-hmm. And then to the very, very casual people, they have no idea who Kyle Rayner is. And I think that's a that's a sin.
I have no idea.
Yeah. Hopefully that won't stay that way. Because I think he's fantastic. He also has one of the cooler Green Lantern costumes. By the
I
way.
was gonna say that, dude. I think he, in my mind, I've always liked his look the best. Like John's is like he's pretty BA, but it's like kind of like Hal. It's cool and iconic, but Kyle feels like that. Like I don't know, man. Like even just staring at his Funko Pop when I'm looking at him right now, he's just cool. Like he's just
So
such
cool.
a cool character.
Love him. But yeah, that's my number one.
Listen, you heard 14 really good characters that some are projected to be in the new DCU Chapter 1. Some might not have been penciled in yet. Hopefully, we see each and every one that we just talked about. Again, at the end of the day, the goal here is like character. There are a lot of common things you heard when you're listening back to this, or if you're listening live. Thank you. But story, character, moments, and then the looks come with it. The action comes with it. The sequences. The DC character pool is so interesting, so diverse. It is the storytelling that can happen starting in 2025. Listen, I'm spooked if I'm anyone else who's trying to top what is most likely coming down the pipeline.
Yeah.
Like the DCU is going to be spooky good. I think it's going to be really good. We've said it, high hopes, but it's hard not to think how good this can be when you do something like what we did today and you're looking through and you're trying to pick characters like, oh, that's a great one. Oh, that's a great one. Oh, that's a great one. You're just like, oh my gosh. Like,
and just the interactions that all these characters can have together is just so cool. And I mean, you take a look at what Blue Beetle did. Because we know Blue Beetle's gonna be he's the first DCU character. We know that. And the feelings that movie brought to us because of Jaime. Just imagine the interactions that he'll have with a Nightwing, with a Batman, a Superman, any of the other characters that we've talked about so far. And then well, because I think we know, because we know he's coming.
Yeah. He was on my short list. I had a short list. I had him, Hawkman, Black Canary, Booster Gold, potentially the Atom, but get stuck in.
Again, just the coolest things is coming out of DC, and I know some people are hating on it, oddly enough, because they're like, oh, it's not going to be the MCU, and I'm like, yeah, it's not, and I don't want it to be the MCU, because the MCU is its own thing, and I don't want to see the MCU again. As much as I love it, there's no fun in seeing the same thing. The DCU is going to be its own thing, and it's going to be fun. A lot of fun.
Yeah, it's the what the DCU can be, and if you heard it from these characters we talked about, it's going to be a well-rounded world. But think of that. It's going to be a world that's going to include different dimensions, and it can be multiversal, universal, cosmic, earth-based, street, whatever you want to call it. All that's going to fit inside this DCU world. And that is so cool to be able to have all of these subsets and subsets of subsets to where they're going to be able to tell endless stories. Endless stories. If they do it right, and they have the right people in place, it seems, don't be surprised if you see one of these 14 characters sooner rather than later, and you're just like, oh my gosh, Point3 Podcast was on it. Fantastic choices. Wow, what timing.
Other side.
Perfect.
We're all in different states too, but do you just see what happened there? That was just yeah, double. If I had a third, shoot.
If I had a third, I would too.
Yeah. But that's it. Unfortunately, we have to end it.
Well, I hope you all have a wonderful Thanksgiving if you're watching this on Thanksgiving, or after. I hope you had a good Thanksgiving. And thank you all for joining us on the Point3 podcast. Remember to mark your calendars for Wednesday nights at 9:05 Eastern Time when we go live on YouTube for deep dives, discussions of the latest news, reviews, and insider scoops. For our podcast enthusiasts, catch the full episodes anywhere you listen. Click the link tree in our bio and we got a whole bunch of links. If you're tuning in during Invincible season 2, episode 4, part 1 finale, I believe, then share your thoughts over on our social medias at Point3Podcast on Instagram or TikTok. Your comments might make it onto the spotlight in our next review episode. And until then, keep watching, keep reading, and keep nerding out.
Peace.